what we're going to do today is have this discussion. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and they will just go one from the other and give a few minutes talk on their views on politics and challenges and obstacles for women. And then afterwards, we're going to have a question and answer. Zhiling Wang, at the end, better known as Kathy to all of us, is from Elementary Education College, Tianjin Normal University. She graduated from the Foreign Language Studies University with a bachelor's degree and from Tianjin's Normal University for her master's degree. She's now a visiting scholar here at West Kentucky College, Community and Technical College, and she's been teaching Chinese language since she got to Paducah last August. Zhang is also from the Foreign Language College of Tianjin Normal University. Her American name that she chose was Susan. She taught English in China, but now she teaches Chinese culture here at West Kentucky. She's married, and her husband and daughter visited her this past January. Now her daughter, Vivian, is a first grader at Concord Elementary School. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity. Both Susan and Vivian enjoy their work and study in Paducah. Merryman Kemp. Mary's been a friend of mine for a long time. She owns Kemp Financial Incorporated. If you need any financial assistance, insurance, et cetera, I'd be glad to give her an endorsement. She's been very active, very, very active in politics, community, women's rights in Paducah and in Kentucky. She's founder of the Merryman House, our local spouse abuse center, or domestic crisis center. Audrey Lee is a local attorney here in Paducah and a writer. And that's about what we're going to start. Who's going to start? Okay. Please welcome our panelists today.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to have such a wonderful opportunity to share the women's situation in China with you. And now, I prepared some slideshow. First of all, I'd like to mention in China, in 1950, the Communist Party declares that women hold half the sky. This slogan is very popular in China nowadays. So you can see women can be as equal as men from this saying, women hold up half the sky. And in 1990s, Chinese government established the National Working Committee on Children and Women under the State Council, which is made up of 33 ministries and commissions. So from this, you can see women in China work as equal as men. And this is the mission. And this picture you will see, this is the best example to show women can work as equal as men. Even the vice premier Wu Yi worked as vice premier in the central government. And all the following pictures will show the women deputies on National People's Congress, the young lady. This is a deputy of a male minority group. Yes, the special garment and costume you will see. A journalist, you will see, from this picture we see women work as men. The Chinese spokeswoman, okay. Now, nowadays in China, there are many women mayors in China, and also the figure is up and up. In 1991, only 150 women mayors. But now last year, you will see the figure is up to more than 670, and among them, 40% with a master or doctorate degree. And this is one of the female mayors in Shenzhen. She's from Shenzhen. And Liz is from Hangzhou, a very beautiful city in China. Okay. This is the annual report from 2007. From this survey, you will see 55% women agree that their life is happy for the 4 reasons. One is the salary increases, better housing, more advanced communications, and the convenient commuting. And at least the detailed figures you will see. And now, next, I'm talking about the challenges and the problems. The first problem or the challenge is that in hunting for a job, comparing speaking with the male employee, the unemployment rate is higher, compared speaking. And also sometimes in some companies, they set up the double standards for male and the female employee. For example, for the public service jobs, the standard is different. The age standard is different. So this is the first difficult. And the second one, some women, especially when they work as administrators, they face the glass ceiling effect. Glass ceiling effect, that is, women, the administrators encounter the difficulties, especially when they work in a certain office. These will hinder them from getting promoted. So from the following figure, you can see the managers of a corporation for the females percentage is 42.1%. But for the general manager, the females percentage is up to only 16.6. But the males rate is up. The female is down, you will see. So this is the glass ceiling effect. And another one is some women, especially with a doctorate degree, find it's difficult in finding a husband. The reason is that, the first reason is that these interviewees thought the traditional idea blocked them in finding a husband, because in China, people bear such a traditional idea that is men would be better in all aspects than a woman in a family. So the ladies who hold the doctorate degree prefer to find the future husband also has the doctorate degree. So you will say this is the first reason. And the second reason, they complain that, they missed the best time while they were studying. So probably these two are the main reasons. And the last year, there was a survey to show the top professions for women in China. The first one, toy designer, home designer, HR manager, career development facilitators, yoga coach, and the last one, parent offspring education teacher, all of these. Okay, very brief, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm the second speaker. My name is Susan. I'm from Tianjin Normal University too. I teach Chinese culture here in WKCTC. I still remember an interesting anecdote during my first days in Paducah. At that time, I didn't have a car. I decided to walk to Walmart to get my groceries. And later, a friend of this college told us she thought, well, this time the Chinese professors brought their wives. yes, we are wives, we are mothers, but we are more than that. So we have professional roles to play. And when we are at home, our roles are mothers, daughters, and wives. And when at work, I think we play the role of women at different careers. And I am lucky to be here. I feel honored to be the first female professor to teach here in Paducah. And I think I am quite an observer. I often observe the women around me in my family. And I think I am inspired by the women in my family. And my two grandmothers were born in the early 1900s. My paternal grandmother was from a wealthy family. All her three brothers graduated from prestigious Chinese universities, but she remained an illiterate all her life. Because at that time, in the early 1900s, Chinese women were denied opportunity to receive formal school education. And at that time, people held the traditional idea that an educated woman had the most valuable virtues. So she didn't go to school, but she was a decent woman. Even she was in time of difficulties and poverty, she was very generous to the friends in need. And she was patient, she was a good listener. So from her, I learned generosity and patience. My maternal grandmother was from a very poor rural family. She became a widow while she was only 27 years old. At that time, my mother was only 6 months old, and her brother was only 5 years old. But my grandmother was not down and out. She fought against all the ills of life. She established a small factory of carpentry, and all her employees remained lifelong friends in my family. And whenever I have difficulties in life, I always think of my two grandmothers. They survived the atrocities during the Japanese invasion. They survived countless civil wars in China. They survived Cultural Revolution, and they survived their husbands too. So my difficulties and barriers in life are nothing compared to theirs. And there is my mother-in-law. She is a very liberal-minded woman. She teaches Russian, and she graduated from the same college with mine. And she travels a lot. Sometimes, every year in summer, she travels to Russia, teaching, traveling, and she has friends from other countries, friends from Japan, Vietnam, Russia as well. And she is very knowledgeable. She is a woman who is very brave, I think. And my own mother is a very optimistic woman. Whenever I am upset, she is the one who encourages me a lot. I remember while I was a teenager, I went back home with a school report, which was full of C's. I was very frustrated, but my mother encouraged me by saying, "Next time you will do better." And several years later, when I became a college student, I came back home with a school report full of A's. I became an A student, but later I had another problem. I didn't have a boyfriend, which frustrated me. The reason I wanted a boyfriend was not so, actually, I didn't want a boyfriend so desperately. The only reason was to prove that I was pretty and attractive enough. So I asked my mother, "Don't you think I am a pretty girl?" And she always said, "Yes, you are." But I also asked her why I don't have a boyfriend. And she always encouraged me that by saying, Of course you will. You will have a wonderful boyfriend and you will have a husband too. Yes, she was right. I'm married. I have a wonderful husband who is very supportive. And by the way, he doesn't have a better degree than mine. I have a master's degree. He only has associated degree, so which I'm very proud of. And he provides material support in our family. I provide the family with educational and spiritual support. I think we divide our duties very carefully. And there is another woman I want to mention in my life. She is my daughter. She's only 7 years old, but she has very, very challenging questions. Sometimes she even demands more freedom from me. And I have to keep up with her. And I also improve myself. Together, we read fairy tales. We explore the oceans and mountains by reading National Geographic magazine. And our relationship is more than mother and daughter. And we are companions, we are friends. And I think I am really inspired by the women in my family. They represent ordinary Chinese women. They have nothing special, but in every day, they create ordinary miracles. Thank you.
The students who came in and are seated out in the back, if you would like, now would be a good time for you to come forward. That way you can experience this wonderful event to the fullest from out front. And you don't have to move if you don't want to. I'm reminded of a professional woman I met many, many years ago in BPW at one of our state conventions. And there are a couple of women in this room who might have been at that state convention. She told this story. It's about a single mother who had a little girl who had to go to school. She was in like kindergarten. And this story is to illustrate if you're ready to learn or not. And I hope you're ready to learn. We'll see. The little girl came home from kindergarten on a Friday, and she had a note with her. On Monday, they were going to teach sex education, according to the note. And if the mother didn't want her child to participate, then she needed to make other arrangements. Well, that's easy to say, but some of you people out here may be single mothers, and you know that it's hard to do. She fretted about it all weekend, but she could not make other arrangements, and she sent her child off to school. And at the end of that day, as you might imagine, she was very concerned about what her daughter would have to tell her. But she didn't want to make an issue of it, so she was waiting for the little girl to tell her about it. Well, the little girl was more interested in an after-school snack. The mother said, "Well, what did you learn at school today?" "Oh, just the usual." "Well, what?" "Well, we did DEF. And she said, "Oh, okay." "Well, what else did you do?" "Well, we played. We went outside at recess." She said, she was just really frustrated. She said, "Well, I thought you were going to learn about sex education." And the little girl said, "Oh, we did. She said, "Well, what did you learn?" She said, 2 things. Buy condominiums and be careful at intersections. So I thought about this audience. I thought it would be mostly women, but I thought, what can I tell these people besides what Johnette had told me to mention or to focus on? What can I tell them that they can really use and take home with them? One thing is, if you're not married yet, keep your own name. Second is that I've forgotten the second one. But the third one was more serious. If you are raped, I hope that you will go to the authorities and prosecute. We don't always do that. As to opportunities and challenges, those of us in the room who are over 40 are the minority. And sometimes in the technological advancements that are happening so fast all around us, those of us who are over 60, say, or over 70 in my case, we are considered irrelevant. We want to, as women, be productive all of our lives. And we want to, as a society, to value each generation and what that generation can provide. Personally, I've found that each decade's been better. My 60s were a lot better than my teens. I think I may be at the point of diminishing returns, but I'm not sure. We'll see. As far as opportunities, there are laws that help us if you're female that were not on the books when I was the age of you younger people. And then the general attitude toward females has changed in the United States for the better. Sarah mentioned in introducing me that I founded the Merryman House Domestic Crisis Center, and I confessed to Susan today that even after all these years, and it's been over 30 years, that I have not observed a decrease in the violence against women. But I'm an optimist. I'm still hopeful. And our society seems to be changing again, changing for the better. And I hope that that's true. So the attitude that you find when you go out in society looking for a job, for instance, seems to have changed and changed for the better. There's still harassment. I hear tales of that quite often. We're still brainwashed as females to the point where we don't even realize we're being discriminated against, or sometimes we don't even realize we're being abused. When young women tell me that they have never suffered from discrimination, it tells me one of two things. Either they're really not paying attention or they're in denial because the discrimination is still there. And as far as the brainwashing is concerned, I got a call this week from someone, not from the woman herself, she's still too brainwashed, but from a female friend here in Paducah. A married couple had taken this woman in. She's from not far away, but in Tennessee. And her husband took away her keys, gave her $50, put her on a bus, and sent her to Paducah because she has a mother and a father in an adjoining county. He, on the other hand, kept the 3-year-old girl, all of their property, their vehicles, everything, and as soon as she was gone, he went to the courthouse, filed for divorce, and charged her with abandonment. She should never have gotten on that bus. I wouldn't have, and I hope you would not have. But her parents in the adjoining county, her father's a part-time minister in one of the religions that is predominant in this area, and they are not supportive. They are saying that she needs to go back to this husband, who's a fine man, I'm sure, because he works at a children's home supported by the church that he attends. But he has convinced all her friends, or those that we know about, that she has abandoned him. And this woman really does not realize that she is that brainwashed. So I'm hoping that none of you in this room are that brainwashed by our society. In my own home, when I was born, I was the first of 4 girls. Each one of us was named Thomas Jefferson Jr., Thomas Jefferson Merryman Jr., until we got here and turned out the name was not fitting because we were all girls. In my family, boys are recognized as being better. They always are better. My 2 sisters and I produced 7 boys. None of them to carry on the family name because we're all girls. In Brazil, it is the custom, it's done in that country, in Portugal, that the children take the mother's name. We always know the child is ours. I think it makes sense. Of course, in the first generation, we're still keeping our father's name, but after that, it's the mother's name that follows the children. I just took my name, and that brings up another point, semantics. It's so important to us in meeting and taking advantage of opportunities. I'm telling you, Merryman has been a much better name for me as a first name than Joyce would ever have been. Even though in England, I know Joyce is a masculine name, but in the United States, it's feminine. The name, what you call something, semantics is just very, very, very important. Just a couple of weeks ago, at some introduction, it was ladies and men. Why not ladies and gentlemen? We women are not always ladies. Women is a much stronger word. We don't even realize the brainwashing effect that our words have. That saying that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That may be appropriate for a 3-year-old. No, it really isn't appropriate for anybody. It's not true. Words are powerful, and words can hurt us or help us. To help us, we must change what we call things. It can be done. We did it in the United States. We no longer would call Audrey's wonderful, very dignified father boy. We would not do it. And it has made a change for the better in our society. We have a lot of challenges. We still get lower salaries for the same work, 69 cents to the dollar. We are the ones who get sandwiched. I'm sandwiched between my 89-year-old mother, my grandchildren in Paducah who need me, and it's harder when you're my age to do all that cooking and all that washing and help with the homework and still keep my business going. And other people have it far worse than I do. But I heard of a woman the other day who had the care of her great-grandchildren. I thought, oh dear, if I have to take care of great-grandchildren, I won't be able to function. I just won't. And now in our economy, as bad as it is, one of the challenges that some of us face is we have grown children coming back home to live. And sometimes they bring their children, their spouse, and their children. There's the health care problem that we face, and it falls heavily on women. Insurance companies, they do it in group policies too. You may not be able to detect it, but I know how. And in individual policies, we women pay more. You know why? We're the deluxe model. We have the indoor plumbing. But we do pay extra for it. And child care, elder care, all of those things. Now, Johnette asked me to talk about the politics of the Merryman House, but I've run out of time. And I'll be glad to talk with you about that afterwards if you do have questions or want to talk about it. And we will take questions at the end. But I wanted to go back to semantics a little bit more because it is so important. Why do we call women girls? And why do we move heaven and earth to look younger than we are. It's to catch that man that you're talking about. They've always been in short supply because we kill them off in those wars that were brought about by all that testosterone and greed. But anyway, is it worth the effort? I mean, men are not that hard to find. I've been married 3 times. And if you think about focusing on other things and putting your time and efforts into that, think of all the positive changes you can make. And let me tell you, all 3 of those husbands had wonderful points. The first husband made lots of money. He's now got Alzheimer's in Florida. But we were friends. We were married 11 and a half years. My second husband, he's brilliant, chemical engineer, honorable man, really nice guy. Well, some of you people in here know him. We were married 21 and a half years. I had a son by each one of those men. And then after I'd been divorced last time, a couple of years, this fella came to my office. Clients of mine had sent him. He had been 12 years in Spain, and he needed health insurance. Well, we're now married, and he's the best one of the lot. But I don't have anything against marriage. I don't have anything against men. I really, really love them. But think about how much time and effort you spend in front of that mirror, and it's really, you're beautiful if you're young and if you're clean. Just wash your face and go on. And I tell you another thing, those panties don't have to be folded. You can stuff them in a drawer. I finally found that out after all of these years of folding, all the time I wasted. And I had on my paper, before you mentioned it, we hold up half the sky. Let's make our lives count. And the way I sign all my emails is courage. To make your life what it ought to be, you're probably going to need some courage, because life has a way of handing us bad things along the way with the good things. But it's the only game in town, and it's the best game in town. So have courage and have a good life.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Lee, and I'm the last of the speakers here on the panel. And I am a local attorney here, and you think lawyers are automatically involved in politics. Well, I'm not a politician. I am with the Public Defender's Office here, and we can't engage in politics. Some states, the public advocate or public defenders, they run for office. In Kentucky, the head public advocate is appointed by the governor, so that is kind of political. But staff attorneys below that, we don't participate in politics. Prosecutors run for office, but we don't. And it's just strange. I thought about politics, and someone has said that politics is personal, and I had already thought about, talking about a lot of the women who become leaders in politics don't start out thinking that they're going to be doing politics. They don't take political science. They don't go to school to be lawyers. Although, like a lot of the lawyers are in politics, they run for the legislative office, they run for the Senate. But there are people of varied backgrounds, and what happens sometimes that women get to be leaders in political situations just out of necessity, of what is needed at the time. So yes, it becomes personal. And I thought about, as everybody was talking, I wrote some more names down because they weren't even on my list. I was going to talk about today and the changes that are coming now that we have a new sheriff in town in the White House in the Obama administration. But I thought about some of these women that I don't think that Sojourner Truth, when she was trying to advocate for the rights of women, for the rights of black people, probably didn't think that she was being a political leader. Mary McLeod Bethune, when she was talking to the president's wife to try to get rights for blacks and for women, I don't think she thought of herself as being in politics. Of course, Eleanor Roosevelt was married to the president, and she was like an advisor, you know, back room advisor, whatever. But I don't think that Eleanor thought that she would be recognized for the influence that she had. We have Rosa Parks, when she refused to move from that bus that day, that lady had no idea that she would be a leader in the civil rights movement, and you know, by that she would be a leader in politics. Coretta Scott King was married to Martin, and I don't think that she thought at the time, being married to a minister, that she would be recognized for her role in politics, so she tried to help in the civil rights movement. I'm a local attorney here, but before I had a career in international public relations, so I got to travel all around the world. So we get here in the United States, and I think our memory, we get short term, and every time something comes up we think it's new and it's never been done before. And I just named off some names of some women that have been involved in political activities for a long time, and we forget the names of some of these powerful women that we've had in politics. I mean, when I was growing up, Barbara Jordan I thought was the most eloquent and beautiful. I mean, that was just the epitome of the strong political woman, you know, and a black woman. I wanted to be like Barbara Jordan. She sounded so wonderful speaking, you know. So, but there are names like that kind of, you know, leave us and we forget about those women. But if you go and think globally, we've heard from our professors here from China, and talked about the mayors in their towns and their countries. You know, if you think globally, you see that we've had the Indira Gandhis, you've had the Margaret Thatchers, you've had women, powerful women in positions, and you know that we never thought of here. One of the my experiences I tell people about is that when I was working in international public relations, I went to a seminar. It was an international seminar, a symposium. I was there kind of like as a watcher for kind of like a United Nations watcher, but I think I was there for the World Council of Churches, and I went on their behalf to kind of watch, and it was like a grassroots movement to watch to see how women were being treated in developing countries. And I was just there as an observer to come back and make reports to the World Council. And they went to Barbados in October, hurricane season. And so my friends from Puerto Rico would said, who would actually think of coming to the Caribbean in, you know, hurricane season, you know? So, but we were there. And one of my experiences there is I got to sit in a hurricane shelter with Dame Edith Barrows, who was the Barbados ambassador to the United Nations. So I got to have a long conversation with her while we huddled in this little concrete shelter. So, I mean, women of power. I mean, we've had the Jean Kirkpatricks, we've had the Madeleine Albrights. You know, I mean, I'm sitting here next to a woman of power in a little concrete hurricane shelter having a conversation. And when I first moved back to Kentucky and I took on a job doing public relations at the University of Louisville, one of my first assignments was to help with the news information public relations for a visit for one of the Gromeyer winners, and it was the Prime Minister from Belgium who was a woman. So yeah, we have women who are in positions globally. Right now, statistics show that the United States ranks only 69th in the world in the percentage of women holding political positions. The president of Chile right now is Michelle Bachelet, and she is the first woman leader in Latin America who did not have a husband to precede her as president. But we have women who come to power, I'll say sometimes just by necessity. I thought of those women who were in Ireland before they got peace in Ireland, who were the Nobel Peace Prize winners, because you had one Catholic and one Protestant woman, and they were just tired of their children being killed, and they tried to get together to send the kids and have a camp and have some sort of peaceful relationship, and that got them nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know if those women were thinking that they were just putting themselves out there for politics. They were thinking of saving their children's lives. When Rwanda, in recent years, 14 years ago, had a horrific massacre there, But now if you look at the government in Rwanda, you will find that half of the parliament there is made up of women. So in other countries, you have women who are in power. They're there out of necessity and out of personal positions. Here in the United States, we look at women of power that we've had. We've had Condoleezza Rice, who's been our most recent Secretary of State. Now we have Hillary Clinton, Secretary Clinton, and of course she's a former First Lady, and she had an awful lot of influence and worked on a lot of things, and was and she was a U.S. Senator, so a very powerful political woman. Hillary Clinton, of course, was a lawyer. Condoleezza Rice came from a different background. You know, she was a trained classical pianist and ballerina and did Russian studies. And she was like the provost at Stanford University. She came from academia and went to politics. So that just shows you how your life can change. Now, we've had the last race, we had Governor Sarah Palin, who ran on the vice presidential ticket and made a big splash, and everybody was so proud of Sarah Palin. But we forget that about 24 years ago, we had Geraldine Ferraro, who was on the vice presidential ticket for the Democrats. And Geraldine has been a long time in government and in politics and very influential. I looked at one of the stories I wanted to talk about is the U.S. Supreme Court justices. We had Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Now, judges are kind of different. Supreme Court justices are appointed by the president, so they're not really, they don't run for political office. So, and you don't really think of them in politics. The only thing we all remember is that the Gore v. Bush case, and so the Supreme Court gave the presidency to George Bush, so that was kind of political, but normally they stay out of that. They do make the laws, though. They do make rulings on the laws when the legislatures, have laws and you think that this is just unfair, so that's how the justices get into politics. In your state level, you'll have your Supreme Court justices will run, and your local level judges. There were rules on judges that kind of defined what you could do, so you didn't have a lot of politicking, but those rules have changed, and I noticed that a lot of our judges here lately have stepped down and retired because they don't want to have to go through what you do go through with politics now in campaigning. And I'm reminded that 20 years ago, 25 years ago or so, I was just out of college, and I was dating, I was not dating a fellow. This guy wanted to date me. That's what it was. And my excuse that I used at the time for him, that I just could not date him, was because I was going to go back to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer. And who knows, I might end up in politics. And you would be a liability. That's actually what I told him. I had no idea the scrutiny that politicians go through now if you're running for office. So, 20 years ago, I was prophesizing that, people would be looking at your background, and I told him, you and your family would be a complete liability to me, so I'm sorry, I cannot date you. But anyway, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sandra Day O'Connor. Sandra Day O'Connor has stepped down, retired from the Supreme Court because they're there for life, but she wanted to be with her beloved husband who had Alzheimer's, so she stepped down to him. But I have a funny story about her. I was doing PR for her, and she had some very strict rules about what you do. And so news reporters could come in and turn the cameras on for just this long, and then that was it, and they had to go off. Someone in Louisville came late and turned the camera on, and she saw it, and she was up there speaking. And afterwards, and I jumped up out of my seat and ran over and said, the rules, turn those cameras off. You cannot do that. Justice O'Connor said, she says, no. So I got up, and so my boss afterwards, they said, Audrey, what was that was going on out there? And I said, I took care of it. And she just looked at me and she just smiled, and I said, she has a bullseye on the back of her door that says, if this woman ever becomes a lawyer, She is. I got it in for her. She is not going to come up and argue before the Supreme Court because I said she just knew that those people came in and started recording and I didn't cut them off quick enough. So I said she's got it in for me, but you know, she's not there anymore, and I've not gotten a chance to argue before the Supreme Court. One day maybe. But one of my heroes now is Michelle Obama, and I just know that Mrs. Obama did not think that she was going to be in politics. She is the First Lady. She didn't run for office. Her husband ran for office. But, you know, when he first ran for U.S. Senator, he moved to D.C. She stayed in Chicago and raised those girls. And she is a lawyer and a strong woman and provider in her own right. She was earning six figures there in Chicago, and she stayed there, running the house, and kept her job. She served on boards and also as an administrator of the hospital there in Chicago. And now she is the First Lady, and she is defining her own role. She is a different First Lady. And the first time I saw her on the campaign trail, I told everyone, I said, I like that woman. That woman there, I can identify with her. We come from working class families, went to law school. I like that woman. I, like what she's doing. He's got just the right mate, as he's running for office because she's all that. But Obama has made some changes in the White House, and the social secretary of the White House, Desiree Rogers, I'm sure she doesn't think she's political either. I mean, she's a social secretary. She came from a socialite type of background, modeling, that type of thing. But now she's the one who's in charge of setting tours up and making sure everyone's comfortable in the White House. But let me just tell you some of the names of the women named to Obama's cabinet since he's been there. We have Melody Barnes, who is the Director of Domestic Policy. We have Carol Browner. She's the White House Coordinator for Energy and Climate Policy. Hillary Rodham Clinton, I've already mentioned, as Secretary of State. You've got Lisa Jackson, who's Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. You have Valerie Jarrett, and Valerie's background was in real estate, and she was an advisor and a mentor to Obama, but she's the senior advisor to President Obama. You got Don Johnson, who's the Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Legal Counsel. You've got Elena Kagan, who's the Solicitor General. You've got Karen Gordon Mills, the Administrator for the Small Business Association. You've got Ellen Moran, who's the Communications Director. You got Janet Napolitano, who was the former governor of Arizona, who's the Secretary for Homeland Security. Susan Rice, who was one of the youngest women in 1997, she pole vaulted over other women to become the youngest assistant Secretary of State. She's a protege of Madeleine Albright, and she is your UN ambassador. You've got Cristina Romero. She is chairperson of the Council of Economic Advisors. You got Mary L. Shapiro, who's the chairperson of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. You've got Hilda Salas, who's the Secretary of Labor, and I might add that she's a member of the Business and Professional Women, and I am president of the Paducah chapter of Business and Professional Women, which is a group which is nonpartisan, but we monitor things and let people know what's going on because we're all about economic growth and equity for women and education for women. You've got Nancy Sudley, who's the chair of the White House Council of Environmental Quality. And all in all, in this last election, we see that Colorado, in the last election, we got women in Congress. We got 94 women who were elected to the House and the Senate. Serving the Senate, we got a record high of 17 women. We've got 8 women governors serving now. And then you look at states and elected offices, Colorado is the number one in the percentage of women in elected offices with 39%. South Carolina is 50th in the nation with only 10% of women to elected office. one of the things that President Obama said that he was going to be in support of, that he did support, and that he did take care of when he got into office, was to sign the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. And Lilly Ledbetter is just a woman who was working and discriminated in pay on her job. She sued, she lost, but she took it a step further. She wasn't thinking of being political, but when President Obama signed that Lilly Ledbetter Act, she was there. She got to go to DC for the inauguration and be there. And she said she's just an ordinary woman, and she's retired now, and she won't get any of that back pay that she was lost due to discrimination against her in the pay, while they paid men and didn't pay her the same amount. She won't get that, but she said other women will benefit from that. And our next step, now that women are in support of, is the Fair Pay Equity Act. And that bill will close up the loopholes, and that's something that women have been working for, and we hope that President Obama, we hope that Congress passes that, and we have plenty of women to help in that, women that are in support of that, like Senator Kay Hagan and Senator Jean Shahan, Senator Debbie Halverson, Representative Ann Kirkpatrick, Representative Betsy Markey. These women who all just came in this last election. So we've come a long way with women in leadership, in politics, and sometimes, like I said, it's not, you don't think it's politics, but it's personal, and it ends up going there. So thank you so much.
I hope you all have enjoyed this as much as, I mean, I took notes. I take notes because it's just fascinating to me, the connections amongst all women. And the story of your mother-in-law knowing Russian. My mother-in-law was a special education teacher, second grade in Southern Illinois, and she went on a tour to schools in the Soviet Union way back in the early 1970s, and in fact even went on a trip to China to visit the schools. And everybody in Southern Illinois, in her system, she would go on the radio and all, and they thought she was crazy to go to these other countries and learn about education. How did you go? You know, she said, well, we have a lot we could learn. And I always admired her for doing that too. I think we're all inspired by women in our lives, be it my grandmother who canned and put her peas next to her canned pears so that it would look pretty on the shelf. She had an artistic sense, but she was a farm woman, and so that's where she used her talents, was the way it was all organized. And so we all get part of our input from all these different folks. The story of your underwear is funny. My dad was a career Marine, and I don't know if any of you all know any Marines, but they have to have their uniforms pressed a certain way and all. My mother did that, and this is in the days before air conditioning. It was a very hot job. But she actually ironed my dad's boxers. And I thought, that'll be the day. That will be the day. Merryman didn't tell you about her talking about if language isn't important and what we call ourselves. Does it really matter if it's fisherman? Am I a fisherman? Does it matter if we call them policemen? We now call them police officers. We call firefighters, not firemen. If it doesn't matter, then for one calendar year, let's call manhole covers womanhole covers. Why is it that, if it's not important, then why do we keep certain labels? So changes have been made in labeling that I think are a very good thing. Years ago, the women's movement began on issues when women had a vision that when they saw something wrong, it just kind of ate on them. They couldn't turn away. And if it was child labor in factories, if it was immigrant women who needed education and they had settlement houses in Chicago, that's how women were drawn into things. It's things that affected their personal lives, and that's why politics becomes personal. Women want fair play. Little child will tell you it's not fair. Things are not fair. And you say, yeah, life's like that. Life's just not fair. Maybe that's not the answer we need to tell our children. There was a long list of people who became politically active after their husbands. Audrey talked about several. I was reminded of when George Wallace, who was governor of Alabama, and he stepped down and his wife Lurleen was elected. And there was a phrase going around that said, politics makes strange bedfellows. And what that means is that on any particular interest, that certain politicians will work together on that issue where they might not work on something else because people will, politics make strange bedfellows. Well, the joke for those two was bedfellows make strange politics when she became governor. I want to remind you that women have only had the vote less than 100 years. Less than 100 years. My mother was born before women had the right to vote. It's not been that long ago. It's not something we've always had, and had women not exerted a tremendous effort, and one young man from Tennessee who thought of his mother and voted for it, we wouldn't have the right to vote. The last, I was really glad that Audrey brought in all those statistics, because I looked up women in politics, opportunity and obstacles. And so you get a whole list of websites on the first page. Not one of them talked about the United States. It was halfway down on the second page before challenges and opportunities for women in politics in the United States was talked about. It talked about Sri Lanka, it talked about China, it talked about India, it talked about Uganda and Nigeria, but it was another, hold down on a page and a half. It talked about UN in several ways. So we can't be smug here, and it's a good thing that we're talking about this subject today in Paducah, Kentucky. Only 1% of the world's assets are held by women, and yet over half the world's workforce is women. Women's participation in management and administration around the world is 33% in developed countries. And so we still have a way to go. The last thing, if you want to know some statistics, and if you get on this site, I promise you that unless you are dead, your consciousness will be raised. Go to census.gov and click on Kentucky. You will be amazed. You will be amazed. Also, go to, there's a thing called CPS on the census site, and it's called Current Population Survey. And they do this in between census. And there's a big PDF on women in the labor force, a data book, and it gives statistics all the way. And it's things like education level, how much money you make, that if you're a woman and you're in school and you're under the age of 45, it's more likely that you've got a part-time job and going to school than men who go to school. Just different things like that, just little statistics that you need to look at and read, because if you think this is a non-issue, your eyes will be open. And finally, the comment about Barbara Jordan, I thought if any of you all, I don't know if any of her speeches would be on the internet. She was a representative from Texas, And people think that Charlton Heston does the voice of God, you know, in the beginning. Let me tell you, Barbara Jordan had the voice of God. Her voice was, I would have sat up straight every time I heard her. Finally, when we started, I talked about all politics is not only local, but personal. How many of you have been born since 1967? Okay. In 1967, I was a high school senior, and I lived in Ohio. And my dad was a retired career Marine and school teacher. And we went down to the local bank, First National, I wish I remembered the guy's name, First National Bank in Middletown, Ohio. And we talked about borrowing money for college that my dad was going to co-sign because I wanted to pay for my school. And my dad had the house loan, car loan. That was his bank. I had a three-piece suit sitting across from the desk, and took one look at me and said, "We don't give loans for college to girls. They never use their education." I kind of became a little bit more politically active after that. If I'd have wanted to get a job locally at the drugstore, secretary, something, I could have gotten a car to go to work. But I wanted money that I was going to pay back, or my dad was, to learn. So it is personal. If I sound just like a little edge to my voice, it is, it is. I learned a statistic years ago that the IQ of a child is directly proportional to the IQ of the mother. Children are our future. It's important that women become educated. Our future citizens need to be bright in every country, in every job, particularly in difficult times. So politics is personal, and it's very important. I want to thank our panel. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did.
How did your Merryman House come about? Was that,
Did you hear the question? Merriman was asked, how did the Merryman House come about?
They told us that we needed to use the mic, and this
Okay.
is a complicated answer. My first husband, I mentioned, who has so much money and is now in an Alzheimer's assisted living unit in Florida. I should have known better than marry somebody whose name was Bobby Don. It wasn't Robert Donald. But he has a lot of good qualities, but when he's drinking, he's mean. He doesn't drink anymore in the Alzheimer's unit. And I was very young when we married. And when I finally became pregnant after 9.5 years of marriage, I know now, but I didn't know then, that violence tends to get worse when a woman is pregnant and with children. So I had left him, but I went back. And when I left him the next time, our child was, when I divorced him, our child was 2.5 years old. And I came here because my uncle owned David Barclay's home across from the campus here. It's now a service station. The house is gone. But I came here to have a father figure for that child. I eventually married a chemical engineer, worked at one of the plants at Calvert City where I worked, and went to Iran to live for a couple of years, came back. There was a need for a shelter for abused women. And it just was to meet that need. The women had nowhere to go, and they usually left. If they had children, they had their children with them. And I knew I had been lucky. I had marketable skills. I had a support system. But a lot of women did not have those things. There just was no place to send them except a homeless shelter, and we didn't have good experiences always with that. But we started with a Safe Home Network, and I'll be glad to talk with you more about it. But there was a need, and we met the need, and are still trying to meet the need, and hoping that the need will go away.
Does anyone else have a question?
I have
Ken?
a question for Audrey. Good. I enjoyed your presentation on the various women in politics and other important roles. Could we talk for a moment about what you've seen since you came back to Paducah? Because you have certainly visited all over the world and a lot of experience in other communities. I've only had the luxury of living here 20 years, but I just jotted down, while you were reciting names, I jotted down the names of women of influence in Paducah right now today, and I think it might be worth looking at the fact that we have a mayor pro tem who's a woman, we have a commissioner on the county commission who is a woman.
Right.
Our incoming Chamber of Commerce president is a woman, our incoming Economic Development Council president next January will be a woman. And of course, right here on campus, we have Dr. Lee.
Right.
I wonder if you could just share with us, I'm not trying to be convincing at all, but I'm just curious to see if you think that Paducah is at least in the middle quadrant of progress as far as bringing women along.
Well, I don't know about bringing women along. Women may be bringing Paducah along. There may be more like it, because where there is a need, women will jump into it. And I didn't have time. I couldn't name off the leadership in Kentucky, the different women, and I meant to, and I had it on my list to say something about the women locally, because we had Mayor Dolly McNutt, and the plaza's named for her, and we had Jerry Montgomery, who was the mayor, who later served as a city commissioner, and we have Gail Kaler, who was a city commissioner, and Carol Galt, city commissioner, with Zana Renfro. We've had women in positions here in Paducah, and of course, yes, the Chamber of Commerce, Dr. Vesey, women step up when things are needed. And with the Chamber of Commerce and the development in the city that's coming along, I've seen a lot of women, just a lot of women since I've been here, a lot of development things in the city with the Lower Town Association, which I live in Lower Town, and we were a part of that. And Gail Kaler was the president of that association when we first rewrote the Constitution down there. We're working on things and getting the artists to come here, and a lot of women down there picked up on that, and we've got the women that are involved in recycling, and a lot of good things here are coming in Paducah. And I think the women just pick it up, and it's not so much that just Paducah bringing the women along. We've got women here who've got skills, and leadership skills, and the women know when things need to be done and just pick it up.
Are there any other questions? Well, after we break, you're welcome to come up to the panelists and engage them in a conversation about something that you would don't want to maybe ask a question about. There's one thing, too, that we really didn't address, and that's maybe a little bit in parenting. But there are young women. I know of a young woman in town who was a professional person who is told if she wants to get ahead, she need not have children. That's also a personal economic issue. And it also affects men, because it's okay to be married, but it's not okay to have children if you want to get ahead. And that impacts all the husbands in the world, too, who are encouraging of their wives and want to have children, and yet maybe that might not be possible in order to have a career. Any more questions? Thank you all for coming. Let's give our panel a round of applause.